Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I'm Josh with my co-host Mike. Today we have a ton to cover. We're going to recap the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. We'll talk about the national championship that just happened on Monday, and we will also preview the two AFC and NFC championship games, give our picks for those games and our best bets. But before any of that, we have some NFL headlines for the week. So Mike, go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, a lot of coaching changes have happened recently. We've just very recently saw Ben Johnson become the next Chicago Bears head coach in a big move by the Chicago Bears, allegedly paying him, I think, 13 million a year, about the seventh highest paid coach in the NFL with no prior experience. So very impressive from him. It's a big contract. This is a big move for the Bears. It's a very impressive move. They have their quarterback of the future for Caleb Williams, and now they can pair him with a potential offensive coach of the future with Ben Johnson. It's going to be very big. There hasn't really been an OC that's been wanted by this many teams in a kind of a long time. He's very highly thought of and could be a huge addition to the Chicago Bears. Now it just depends kind of on who they bring in at DC, and it kind of sounds like Dennis Allen, the top defensive coordinator of the cycle, could be joining him in Chicago. So they are making a lot of moves to get that team going well in the future. It's just, can he bring that culture now to Chicago? He has the offensive mind. Can he put it all together with Caleb Williams? Mike Vrabel to the Patriots. I don't know if we talked about that one before, but kind of the obvious move when they fired Gerard Mayo. He's gonna go there and become the coach of the team that he used to play for. He brings in Josh McDaniels, who is a very familiar sight in New England. We've seen him there for a long time, and now he's back as the offensive coordinator. And just this morning, they brought in Terrell Williams, the Lions defensive line coach. He coached with Vrabel from 2018 to 2013 in Tennessee, and now he joins Vrabel again in New England. Kind of the obvious move. They bring a culture guy. They need Josh McDaniels to pair well now with their young quarterback Drake May, and that could be a big move for them as well, as I think he's a great coach. So we also saw this morning that Liam Cohen is backed out of the Jaguars job. Now two of the top offensive minds, kind of Ben Johnson, I kind of thought he might go there. Liam Cohen also could go there, and now he's backed out. So who knows what the Jags are going to do, if they even go offensive anymore. Kind of sounds like they want to. The GM Trent Baalke seems to be the main issue there. No one really wants to go with him because another bad season and he's gone. And if the GM's gone, pretty much the head coach is usually gone at that point too. So they could still bring in Joe Brady, maybe Cliff Kingsbury, but we don't really know at this point. Aaron Glenn and the Jets are linked together greatly. You know more about that than I do, but it does sound like Aaron Glenn could be joining the Jets, and the Lions booth lose both of their coordinators, offensive and defensive, which is unfortunate. But after such a good season, it's how you expect. They haven't lost a coordinator since 1963, I believe. So I'm pretty sure that coordinator was Don Shula. So that was a big one. The Jets are, like I said, the Jets are still looking for a coach. The Saints, Jags, Raiders, and the Cowboys as well. But the Cowboys have interviewed Brian Schottenheimer about four times, and he's currently, I think, the minus 250 favorite to get that job. So it does sound like they will just promote Brian Schottenheimer to be their head coach.
Yeah, I think Aaron Glenn to the Jets is pretty much a done deal. We saw yesterday on Tuesday he flew to New York, did an interview, left without a job, and then flew back to New York. It was reported by a couple of beat reporters this morning that it's basically a done deal, and it looks like he's going to get the Jets head coaching job, and he's currently formulating his staff. So we'll see who he picks off from the Lions, where else they go to get more coordinators that are left on the market. So I think Aaron Glenn does end up with the Jets as we predicted. Ben Johnson, as you said, he goes to the Chicago Bears. I think it's a great hire for the Bears. I didn't see it coming. I was personally shocked by this. I thought he was almost guaranteed to go to the Raiders or the Jags or stay with the Lions. I was shocked he went to the Bears given the organizational issues that they have in Chicago and Lang Duck GM and Ryan Poles, who, like you said, same thing with Bulky. Maybe he's out of here if they have a bad year next year. So that's a very interesting situation. I understand why he took it because of Caleb, but as a Lions fan, was really rooting for Ben to get a job this cycle if he wasn't going to stay with the Lions because I want to see him be a head coach. I think he'll be a good head coach. But to be distracted with five interviews during the game before or the week before the divisional round to be distracted with 5 interviews before that game against the Commanders, put up the stinker he did, which, yes, the offense scored points. We'll talk about that game later, but he made a ton of bad play calling decisions offensively in that game. And then to 2 days late, a day later, take the job, and 2 days later, you're in the building doing press videos for the team. And not only are you doing all that, but it's your division rival. It doesn't really sit right with me. I'm not going to say I hate Ben Johnson, but I'm obviously not rooting for his success. I think it's a little bit of a scumbag move the way he did it. I'm happy for him to get a job. He's making probably 13 million a year, so I don't blame him for taking that job, but it just doesn't sit right with me. What are the other jobs? Schottenheimer, like you said, has interviewed a ton of times with the Cowboys. I don't know why they have to keep announcing that. He obviously has been in their building a million times. He's their offensive coordinator now. I'm not shocked that he's probably going to end up as their head coach, even though I really want to see primetime Deion Sanders there. That would be crazy. The theory of Deion going to the Cowboys and them getting Shadur is far-fetched. They're not getting rid of Dak by any means, but that would just be sick to see him there. The Jags, like you said, Liam Cohen's out. That surprised me. I did not know that. I don't really know what direction they're going to go. I feel like it's probably got to be Joe Brady at this point, but if Joe Brady doesn't want the job, that's I don't know what they're gonna do. Maybe they
Yeah,
have to promote from within.
they've interviewed Robert Saleh a few times too, so that could be
Could be.
Robert Saleh.
I'm still hoping to Salah as a potential TC for the Lions, but or at least on the staff. But yeah, they might have to just end up settling for somebody. Which, oh man, to get Salah as your head coach after this whole journey would be brutal for the Jags. But I believe that's every head coaching opening. Like we said, yeah, Vrabel hired by the Pats, brings McDaniels and Terrell Williams as his OC in DC. It's crazy to see McDaniels go back to the Patriots once again, but it's cool to see. I think Vrabel's going to do a good job there. And then we didn't mention, I don't think the Raiders. Who knows what the Raiders are going to do now? Because it looked like they were all or nothing in on Ben Johnson, and now they sit here. Ben Johnson's gone. It doesn't look like Liam Cohen's taking. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is going to take a job either this cycle. So the Jags and the Raiders, I don't know what they'll do, but we shall see.
Yeah, and the Saints right now I have odds. I think these were from a couple days ago. The Raiders odds on favorite was Ben Johnson at the time at plus 150, and then second, surprisingly, was primetime Deion Sanders
For the
at
Raiders.
plus 200. Yeah. I still really don't see that happening, but
Now,
I could
there, the
see,
Shadur situation can happen.
yeah, I could potentially see Brian Flores becoming the Raiders' next head coach. If I had to make a pick, I'd probably say him. And then for the Saints' next head coaching odds, it's Mike McCarthy has a pretty heavy favorite with minus 250, and then Joe Brady behind him, behind Aaron Glenn, but it does sound like Aaron Glenn's going to the Jets. So I don't really know really what's going to happen yet, but Mike McCarthy to the Saints, it doesn't seem far-fetched. I feel like he would be more patient and wait for a better job opening than the Saints.
Now, I really love McCarthy to Saints. I think that's a really good idea. You bring in a winning head coach to a program that has been a winning program in their history, especially in the most recent 25 years. I know you had Drew Brees, but it's still a winning team, even when they didn't have the talent in the past 5 years. Outside of this year, they've been able to string together some wins. I like that. I think you pair winners together and you can overcome a lack of talent on both ends. I don't think the Saints would be ready to be a playoff team right away, but I think Mike McCarthy would be a slam dunk hire if you're a New Orleans Saints fan.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be a good hire. I just an interesting cap situation. I also could definitely see Darren Rizzi going back there. It does some. I think
That would be
Kamara
cool.
tweeted that out. He
He
said,
did?
he said something about the coach I want rhymes with Dizzy or something.
Oh wow. That's interesting.
Um, if I can find the tweet, he said, "I my vote for head coach rhyme with Fizzy."
All right, you were close then.
Yeah, I know he said rhyming.
Yeah, but I guess maybe do you think that'd be a good idea for them?
I think it'd be a solid idea. I mean, he's already been there before. I just don't think that would change too much. I don't think that would boost him into a potential playoff spot. I think the Buccaneers right now, especially if they're able to keep Liam Cohen, would keep that division at this moment. But I could see them maybe staying with the Falcons, but with the Panthers trending up too, I just don't think that does enough for them to improve them.
All right. We can move on then to the divisional round recap. we will start off here with the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs win this game 23-14. This game went about as exactly as we thought it would. Low scoring defensive game. Chiefs would fail to cover for a lot of people. CJ Stroud gets sacked a ton, but played well given the circumstances there. Chiefs, they let it stay close for most of this game. The Texans had 8 penalties that absolutely killed them, albeit some of those were horrible calls, really just giving calls to the Chiefs. But still, overall for the Texans, I like the Texans going forward. They had a phenomenal offensive year in Stroud's rookie year. They had a killer defense this entire year. We know their pass rush from Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter was great, but their back end with Stingley and Petrie and Lassiter, those guys are all beasts. This defense is actually legit. The offensive line regression and the wide receivers getting hurt just killed them this year. You saw guys like Laramie Tunsil kind of fall off a bit, and of course, more than half their wide receiver core got cooked this year because from injuries. So I really feel bad for this Texans team that could have been really good this year. Texans' future, though, I think is still very bright. I think they're going to be able to bounce back from this tough season offensively, be able to get that offensive line right when you get those receivers back, and this offense could be even a fraction of what it was last year. This team's going to be really, really good. The Chiefs, this team needs to be taken really, really seriously. They've been dominant on third down offense all year. They were 10 for 17 in this game against the Texans. This team has been flawless in the playoffs for multiple years in a row now. There's no reason they shouldn't be the favorite. They're going to have the refs on their side no matter what. They're going to have the refs on their side. This is Mahomes' second best defense at worst in his career. Last year maybe was better than this year, but this year they're so dominant in the run game. Their secondary is getting more healthy, and we know they're great back there. We know that Chris Jones is going to be able to get to the passer. George Karlaftis can also get to the passer. They have a ton of talent on this defensive end. If they can just survive having some mid tackles on offense, they're going to win the Super Bowl. It just feels that way right now. They're plus 225. I think that's really good value on them. And with the Lions out, I am going to be taking that as my future for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Chiefs get it done again. They win by 9. Uh, if you had the 9.5 cover, I feel bad for you because that safety was just absolutely brutal. They decided to take the safety instead of punting the football. They punt from the safety, and Texans really couldn't get in the game anyways, as it was still a two-possession game. Mahomes played well in this game. Didn't have to do too much, just rely on that defense like they have for most of this season. He only had 177 yards and a touchdown, and he got the ball to Travis Kelce more than enough. It's playoff time. We know Travis Kelce's going to come around and start having big games, and he did that here. 7 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. He was the best player on the field for that Chiefs offense. And the Texans defense, like you said, they played good, but just on the offensive side of the ball, they were unable to get it done. They had their chances. Just really couldn't get enough. Fairbairn, his struggles this season haven't helped at all. He goes 2 for 4 kicking in this game, 0 for 1 on extra points. Just not a good game from him. And then just the offensive line, like you said, just got outplayed by the Chiefs' defensive line. 8 sacks for CJ Stroud in this game. The rushing attack wasn't terrible. Joe Mixon had 88 yards on 18 carries. He got a touchdown. You would have wanted a little bit more, but that's better than what they have had against the Chiefs. And just like you said, the offensive line didn't help them, and they were unable to get it done. They still have yet to make it to a conference championship. The only team I think in the NFL's history to never make it to a conference championship. So, congrats Houston on another divisional exit.
Okay, we will move on here to the Commanders beating the Lions 45-31. This is a very sad end to what was otherwise a great year for the Lions. My view of this Lions team is this. They were able to survive through the regular season with four plus defensive players from the practice squad on the field at all times. If you told Lions fans they would lose Hutch, Carlton Davis, Aleem McNeil, Davenport, Branch, Anzalone, Barnes, Rodrigo, Amik, and more, there's just no way we would predict to just lose 3 games this year. You have 5 defensive starters, 7 defensive backups missing significant time for this Lions team. It always felt to me like one of two things were going to happen. It was either going to be a miracle, magical run for the Lions where they can go score 45 a game and beat everybody and win the Super Bowl, or at some point they weren't going to have the best offense. Ben Johnson would have a bad play calling game, and these defensive injuries would catch up to him. I thought that was probably not going to happen if it did till the conference championship or the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, it happened early and it caught up to them in this game with the Commanders. Goff was bad in this game, but I don't put this completely on him. His three picks were terrible throws, especially the one. The pick six was bad, obviously, but the one right before half when the Lions had a chance to go put some points on the board before halftime when the Commanders were going to get the ball coming out of half. He throws a pick on a post route to Jamison Williams in the end zone. That was horrible. The fumble was more of an issue with play calling than Goff. You just can't go empty set on 3rd and 1. I know Dan keeps doubling down and tripling down about that specific play and how he thought that that was the right decision to make. They got the look they wanted, and I completely understand that. But at the same time, you were running all over this Commanders team until that point. And then when this happens and you fumble on 3rd and 1 and the Commanders go score, and then all of a sudden you're down late in the first half. Now you can't run the ball anymore. So that was your opportunity to run the ball when you were dominating them on the ground in that first quarter. And then you make decisions like those, and now you can't run the ball anymore. And that's why Gibbs finishes with no touches basically in the second half because we didn't give chances to give him touches. We were down by too much that he wasn't able to get the ball and we weren't able to play how we needed to play. Once Amit got hurt, we knew this was going to be a tough game for the Lions. Branch going out was just the nail in the coffin in this game. Norris comes in and gets exposed on every play. Ben Johnson, like I said, he didn't have his best game. The 3rd and 1 empty set was bad. Jamison Williams passing in the fourth quarter, or the late third quarter, when you finally cut the cut the lead to three, I think it was, or 10 or 7 or 10. I don't remember exactly, but Jamison Williams pass. I understand why you'd want to run a trick play like that. The Lions run it all year, but to run it to Jamison Williams, a guy who you know no matter what is going to throw it if he gets a chance, is just a bad decision by Ben Johnson and it shows he wasn't as locked in as he needed to be. And then not opening the game with Jahmyr Gibbs. I love David Montgomery. He had some moments later on in this game, but you need to open the game with Jahmyr Gibbs. As good as Montgomery is, he's injured, and Gibbs is a top three running back in the league when he gets the majority of the touches. You have to get the ball in Gibbs' hands early and often. Like I said, it's a sad end to what was a phenomenal season, but there's nothing to do but bounce back. Right now, my predictions for OC and DC would be Engstrand for OC and Shepard for DC, the current passing game coordinator, and Engstrand and the current linebacker coach in Shepard. Commanders played really well in this game. I want to give a ton of credit to them, but this was just an absolute nightmare game from the Lions, and that's really the story for me.
It really was just a nightmare game for the Lions. The defense, every concern they could have had going into the game about the defense just pretty much shaped out. The defense didn't show up. The Commanders were able to move the ball all game. I think they only had one punt in this entire game, which puts them at one punt throughout the playoffs so far in 2 games. They've been fantastic. And then offensively, the turnovers were just absolutely killer. 4 turnovers, 5 turnovers, 3 interceptions for Goff, another fumble, and then Jamison Williams interception as well. 4 players throw the football for the Lions in this game. Jared Goff, obviously. Montgomery had a beautiful kind of trick play, a flick forward pass to Amon-Ra for a big gain. Teddy Bridgewater came in when Jared Goff got hurt for a little bit, and then Jameson Williams throws that interception. But the Lions just offense didn't play terrible in this game. Just putting themselves in rough positions. The Jameson Williams interception hurt. Running a pass play on that 3rd and 1 when they're on the other side of the 50. They've been running the ball great all game. You're going against one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. You should just be beating them down in the trenches, and they didn't do that, and they ended up fumbling on that play. A big change in that game there. Gibbs was good whenever he had a chance to get the ball. Only 14 carries, gets 105 yards and 2 touchdowns, but how the game went, they weren't able to get him the ball as much in the second half. We saw Jared Goff look good at times, but yeah, the turnovers just hurt. And for the Commanders, Jaden Daniels just is not the average rookie. 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He got the ball out, was never really under pressure. Got zero. The Lions got 0 sacks on him. Was able to get it to De'Ami Brown, who had a big game. A guy who Amon-Ra's talked a little bit of shit about, and didn't really outplay Amon-Ra, but he got the win, so that's all that matters. Six
Didn't outplay
catches.
him on Ra at all. Ra had a
No,
significantly
but
better stat line.
but he got it done
He
and
got
ended
it
up
done,
winning
yeah.
the game.
Just
So
a single player game.
yeah, 6 catches, 98 yards for him. Terry McLaurin, 4 catches, 87 yards, and a big touchdown from him. Just a very big win from the Commanders, and a potential franchise-changing win. Jane Daniels is the QB of the future. That's not even a question. They can potentially keep Cliff Kingsbury now, who said he's not going to take any interviews until after the season. So if teams are going to want him, they're going to have to wait a little bit, at least till the end of this weekend. But big win by the Commanders and very impressive.
Okay, we'll move on here to the Eagles beating the Rams 28 to 22. Once again, the Eagles were able to play their game and hide their weaknesses. Hurts throws just 20 times in this game. They were able to run it really, really well with Saquon 205 on 25 carries. The snow made it a lot harder for the Rams to play their game and a lot easier for the Eagles to play their game, especially given the score when the snow started. Rams were able to stay in this game, though. The Eagles were just 0 for 2 in the red zone, which was perfect for LA, exactly how they wanted to play this game. Of course, we have Saquon breaking big ass touchdowns. That doesn't really matter. But Rams' two turnovers made it very difficult for them, but they still had a chance at the end. Rams had just 30 yards to win this game, but had a turnover on downs late and lose the game on that. The Eagles now get gifted a NFC title game at home with a chance to go back to the Super Bowl against the Commanders. It's hard for me to talk shit about the Commanders because they just beat the Lions, but this is a favorable path to say the least for the Eagles to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely a favorable path. This is a team that they can run against. We've seen it so far in the playoffs. You can still run the Commanders. That hasn't changed. It's just you have to stay in that game script. You have to get stops, and if you can do that, you should be able to win. In this game, Saquon Barkley again against the Rams goes for more than 200 yards. Also adds two touchdowns, two huge runs. The big 78-yard touchdown run was big. Hurts again doesn't have to do too much in a playoff win. Only throws for 128 yards. He was good on the ground. One big 44-yard touchdown run does make it look better, but 70 catches and a touchdown rushing for him. Didn't really have to get the ball out. We only see four catches for Devontae Smith, two for AJ Brown, and Saquon Barkley, the big player for the Eagles offense. Eagles defense was good, but late in the game, they almost looked like they were about to choke it away to Matt Stafford, who almost had another big playoff game-winning drive. He finishes with 324 yards, two touchdowns. They were able to run the ball decent with Kyron Williams. He had over 100 yards, and Puka Nacua has a solid day, six catches, 97 yards. And Rams had a chance on the last drive to go down and potentially win the game, but they were unable to get it done. They lose by six, so I'm pretty sure that'd be a push for us. And yeah,
Yep.
it was a push at six, so they were unable to get it done, but they fought, and I thought they were going to do it late at that game and just completely shock the Eagles, but they didn't. Eagles defense holds strong, and they are able to host a game against the Commanders, a division rival, to go to the Super Bowl.
Okay, last game here. The Bills beat the Ravens 27 to 25. This game was as much of a classic as we expected. Mark Andrews ends up being the scapegoat, and I would usually say that's one play. You can't just blame him for one play. But the fumble on the prior drive was really, really bad as well, and that isn't being talked about as much as the drop. Both those plays together on back-to-back drives is just really brutal for Andrews, a guy who's a great tight end. He's overcome a lot, and it sucks for him to have to become the scapegoat here for his team just not being able to fully perform. The Ravens were really good for much of this game, outgained Buffalo by 150 yards. The biggest issue for the Ravens was losing the turnover battle 3-0, and even then they had a chance to force overtime. I know it's weird to be like, oh, if they just didn't turn it over three times, they would have killed them. But because obviously the Bills defense forced those turnovers. But the Ravens played really well outside of those three individual plays where they turned the ball over. They were able to move the ball really well. They didn't let Josh Allen absolutely go berserk on them, and they were able to have a chance to win this game if they just could hold on to the ball a little bit. The Buffalo had one penalty all game that really helped them throughout. It just overall, it really sucks for Lamar to go out like this, especially with the seasons he had. But one of these guys between Lamar and Josh were going to have a disappointing end to the season given the seeding. We saw this months ago. It was going to be Bills Ravens in the second round unless one of these two choked, and one of these guys is going to end up going out in the divisional round. There's nothing we could really do about it. This time it ends up being Lamar. Josh finds himself with a fourth chance to beat Mahomes in the playoffs next week, and we'll see if he can overcome history.
Yeah, he's gonna have to. The Bills' offense wasn't great, especially through the air in this game. Only 127 passing yards for Josh Allen throughout the game. They really just didn't move the ball as well as you would have expected. They still moved the ball well. 147 yards on the ground was big. The defense came up very big in a lot of moments. Von Miller getting that big fumble recovery was huge and brought it back off of just a bad play by Lamar. Lamar drops the snap, tries to recover it, and then loses the ball. Von Miller picks it up and runs it back uh, decently far. And then the Mark Andrews fumble was big. Terrell Bernard gets that big recovery there. Three turnovers. It's been kind of the story of all of these playoff games. The teams that lose the turnover battles tend to lose the games. And we saw that all weekend in this game. Lamar throws an interception as well that did not help, gave the Bills great field position again. And that's just something you can't do against this Bills team, especially when they're at home. They dominate at home all year, and they continued that. They held Derrick Henry to under 100 rushing yards, which is very big. When you're able to do that, you can beat this Ravens team. He only had 84 yards on the ground. Lamar Jackson, when he didn't turn the ball over, was good through the air, 254 yards, two touchdowns. He got the ball to Isaiah Likely a couple times for some big plays. Rashad Bateman continues to be a huge guy. They were missing Zay Flowers going into this game again, so missing their wide receiver one for the playoffs obviously doesn't help them, but just the turnovers was really the main factor. They had the chances, and the turnovers just put it away. The Bills played a clean game, and that's really what got it done for them. Their defense played well enough, and forcing the turnovers was big. So now the Bills have a chance to go to Kansas City, which they haven't been a great road team, to go to the Super Bowl. They get what they want, and Lamar continues to not have a great playoff resume as another loss here, although he played well. Just another loss, and he's going to have to wait till next year to try to finally get that Super Bowl.
Okay, before we get into the national championship, we have studs and duds for the divisional round. My stud is going to be Cliff Kingsbury. I think he was phenomenal in this game against the Lions. 481 total yards of offense for him. They're 3 for 4 on fourth down, which was the most important part of this entire game. I didn't even mention the Lions having 12 men on the field on fourth down in the inside the 5 on the Commanders. That was a brutal play. But outside of that, the Commanders were just really, really good offensively. I know the Lions had a ton of injuries on the defensive end, but they were still able to out game plan Aaron Glenn, who came off a great week despite having a ton of injuries against the Vikings. They go out there, they dominate this Lions defense. Shout out to Cliff Kingsbury. He's probably going to get a job here soon if he wants it.
Yeah, for my start of the week, I'll go with a different game then, and I'll just go with Saquon Barkley. 205 yards, two touchdowns on the ground for Saquon. He was the reason this Eagles offense was as good as it was. He has two massive touchdown runs, one before the snow and one after the snow. He won this game for the Eagles, and he's been their main force of offense all season. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to do too much in pretty much any playoff game he's played in for most of the time. The Eagles' rushing attack here this year specifically is fantastic, and Saquon is one win away from going to his first Super Bowl, so he's my start of the week.
Yeah, my dud of the week is my hopes and dreams. This is just a heartbreaking loss. It unfortunately reminds me of the Suns going on that run they went on. That reminds me of the choking 2-0 in the finals. The Lions choke a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship. The Suns go on next year, have a dominant regular season, get the number one seed, and get booted early in the playoffs. Lions did the same this year, as we know, and the Suns have kind of dwindled off a bit. I am praying that doesn't happen to the Lions. So my dud is my hopes and dreams.
Yeah, for my dud of the week, I kind of just I don't want to use him as a scapegoat, but you got to go Mark Andrews. The fumble was massive. You cannot fumble in that situation, and then the 2 point conversion, a chance to possibly redeem yourself, and he dropped it, and the Ravens go on to lose after that. Didn't get a chance to touch the ball again. Did not recover the onside kick. So Mark Andrews, he's a great tight end. Just you absolutely cannot have that happen in the playoffs. Just two massive key mistakes. I think he had 4 drops all season. He had 2 of them in this playoff game and the fumble. So just a disaster class for Mark Andrews, and maybe one of the worst games of his career. And just unfortunate that it comes at this moment.
Okay, we'll move on here to our national championship recap. Ohio State beats Notre Dame at 34 to 23. Ohio State finishes the job, bouncing back from their Michigan loss in November. Will Howard was great in this game. He was great in the playoffs itself. Just 4 incompletions, 231 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 57 yards on the ground. He's a great dual threat. Judkins had 100 yards on 11 carries, broke a big one in this game, had 2 touchdowns. Ohio State was up 3 touchdowns in the second half of this game. Notre Dame would go on to force a big fumble after a touchdown in the fourth quarter by Drake Bowen that gave them a fighter's chance in this game. But Ohio State was able to bully Notre Dame on the last possession and run this clock out. Notre Dame was able to take care of the ball like they needed to in this game, didn't turn it over, but they just could not control the line of scrimmage like Ohio State did. Ohio State was able to run it whenever they wanted to. They forced this Notre Dame team who loves to run the ball, whether it's with their quarterback Riley Leonard or if they want to run it with either of their backs. They forced them to have to pass a little bit, and Notre Dame was able to survive in that, but not be able to do the damage that they would usually do on the ground. Ohio State was the best team in college football this year, just further proving that a larger field of playoff teams just helps the best teams who maybe slipped up once or twice in the regular season a chance to go show that they are the best team. They could win it all like Ohio State did. Who knows? Maybe last year we saw Ohio State win the national championship. If they didn't if they lost that game to Michigan at the end of the season, they were still able to make the playoff. So I love this new format. I think it needs to be tweaked a little bit, but overall, I think the college football playoff was a success. We got to see why that we widened the field for all of these teams to come in and play despite maybe dropping one in the regular season. So I had a great time with the playoff.
He had a great time with the playoff as well. A lot of discourse in the early rounds, but in the end, we see, in my opinion, I think the two best teams go against each other for the championship. Riley Leonard was solid in this game, 255 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was their leading ball carrier with 40 yards on the ground, 17 carries. I think he had 8 on the first drive alone. Got a touchdown on that drive, and after watching that first drive, Notre Dame looked like they had it going. The offensive line was bullying a little bit. They were moving the ball well. They had, I think, 3 fourth down conversions, but that was just unsustainable throughout that first half. Just really didn't have anything else going in that first half. Only that 7 points, 2 long drives. The first quarter was only that Notre Dame drive, and then the second quarter was Ohio State's first drive completely and finished that in the second quarter. But they go into halftime down 21-7, and Ohio State from there really just had the edge. They come out of the second half and had a big drive and got a field goal. Will Howard was good in this game, 17 for 21, 231 yards and 2 touchdowns. The key throw at the end of the game to Jeremiah Smith was the big play. Third and 11, deep ball to Jeremiah Smith, one-on-one coverage. He was able to get open, and the Ohio State receivers and playmakers as a whole were just too big of a threat to overcome for the Notre Dame defense. They really just couldn't get stops throughout this game. When they needed to, they couldn't. Kenshawn Judkins was big. Travion Henderson was solid as well. And for Notre Dame's rushing attack that has been great all season was one of their biggest strengths. We really didn't see it at all. Jadarian Price only had 3 carries for 13 yards. Jeremiah Love only had 4 carries in this game for 3 yards, which was very shocking. Going into this game, it sounded like he was fully healthy and ready to go, but that must not have been the case. Notre Dame really didn't run the ball at all, and that was kind of their biggest. They needed to do that to win, and they were unable to do that. But in the end, Notre Dame's offense did start to get going. Riley Leonard's passing attack, Jaden Greathouse had a couple big plays, Mitchell Evans as well. Greathouse gets 2 touchdowns, put them back in the game with a chance to win. They had a fourth and goal from about the 9 yard line late in the game, down 16. They decided to kick the field goal with Mitch Jeter, and he missed it. That was just a bad miss, unfortunate. And the defense was able to get a stop, cut it down to 8. And unfortunately, like I said, that Jeremiah Smith play happened, and we weren't able to see if Notre Dame could go down the field to tie it. But a couple big plays, like you said, Drake Bowen made a big play forcing the fumble. But other than that, Notre Dame's defense, I think, only got 1 or 2 more stops throughout the game. So congratulations to Ohio State. They lost to their biggest rival. They wanted to fire their coach. The own fans wanted to fire their coach. Said they didn't deserve to make the playoffs. They didn't even want to be invited to the playoffs, and now they win, and all of a sudden their fans think they're the best team ever. So congrats to Ohio State, I guess.
Okay, we'll move on here to the championship weekend preview. We'll start with the NFC, the first game, Commanders at Eagles. This is going to be a tough matchup for the Commanders, but we also did think that last week with the Detroit Lions playing them in Detroit, where we said this was going to be a tough matchup for the Commanders, and it's just as tough here in Philly. Commanders' run defense has been very bad, so Saquon should have a day here. The Eagles have shown us that they're willing to run the ball 70% of the time if you let them. That has to be the Commanders' main focus. They are willing to play old-fashioned football, keep the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands, maybe have Jalen Hurts run it a couple times, throw some short passes, throw a couple bombs that he's not going to hit, but still they're going to run the ball as much as they want to. And if this Commanders team lets them run the ball all over them, they are going to. We saw early in the Lions game, the Lions showed they wanted to do that. They were able to, but a couple unfortunate turnovers, the Commanders score so easily every time on your defense, and you can't run the ball every time. I don't think that's going to happen here with the Eagles. I think they're going to be able to run it as much as they want. I think they're going to run all over this team. If the Commanders can force Hurts into throwing deep balls and throws over the middle, then they could definitely play their own style and win this game. I just don't think they're going to have the ability to do that. Offensively, I think the Commanders can fight in this game. Commanders' offense is dynamic enough to score on these tough defenses. A third matchup between teams usually favors the defenses. That's why I lean Philly here. Philly would undoubtedly be 2-0 versus the Commanders if Hurts never got hurt in that first game. I'm torn on the spread though. I'm going to go with -6 Eagles here. I don't know what
Yeah,
the
this
spread still
is
is. I wrote that down yesterday, so we'll
yeah,
check.
this is a tough one. Commanders are in their first NFC Championship game since 1991. The referee for this game is Sean Hotchley. He's worked 16 games this year, and his guys averaged 13.8 penalties per game, which is fourth most in the NFL. Could be a big penalty game going into this. He isn't working with the normal people they have, probably more considering it's the playoffs, only 2 games this week. In games refereed by Sean Hotchley, the Commanders are 1-2 in 2020, 1-0 in 2024. The Eagles are 6-0 with Hotchley 1-0 in 2024. So definitely an advantage for the Eagles there. Good trend for the Commanders is that teams have gone 20-10 since winning the Saturday game in the past 15 years. Obviously, you get an extra day of rest. You get to watch the teams play on that Sunday the day after. That's one big thing. And in the past 19 years, at least 17 of the past 19 years have had at least one team coming off that extra day of rest make the Super Bowl. So them and the Chiefs are both coming off of that extra day of rest. Jane Daniels has been great this season. Obviously, not a lot of rookies have made it this far. Only 5 rookies have made it to start in the conference championship game. Brock Purdy, Sean King, Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco, and Mark Sanchez have all made it this far in their rookie season. In those starts, they're combined 0-5 with a 4 touchdown to 9 interception ratio. Obviously, we've seen Jane Daniels throughout the playoffs be the Commanders' best player on offense. He's been fantastic. Really, my big concern for the Commanders, like it's been all playoffs, is their defense. They give up a ton of rushing yards, 137 and a half rushing yards per game in the regular season, which was third worst in the NFL. And even in their 2 playoff wins, that hasn't gotten better. We've seen the Lions run well against them, the Buccaneers run well against them. They've given up 150 rushing yards per game in their 2 playoff wins. Luckily for them, the fact that they won the game is because their offense was able to go and dominate those games against the Bucs and Lions defense. Both those defenses did struggle during the regular season in yards per game. They gave up a lot of yards. They both gave up more than 340 yards per game in the regular season. Washington took advantage of that offensively and were able to outdo how much yards their defense was giving up. But this week, this Eagles defense is not like that at all. They've given up the fewest yards in the NFL throughout the season. In 9 of the past 11 years, the NFC team that has the home game has went on to the Super Bowl. So that's obviously the Eagles in this one. Division rivals. We've seen these 2 teams play twice this year. This year in Week 11, this Eagles defense was able to hold the Commanders to their lowest scoring output of the season, and 8 of the points of the 18 that they had came on a last-second touchdown under 30 seconds left to make it look like it was 18. I'm leaning the Eagles here. Obviously, with the big defense, Saquon Barkley throughout the playoffs has been fantastic. Jalen Hurts, while he hasn't been great in the playoffs, he hasn't had to do too much. He does have way more experience in these playoff games than Jaden Daniels does. Week 15, like you said, he left that game early. The Eagles still almost won that game. Jaden Daniels had more late game heroics in that game to steal a win. Saquon Barkley had 146 yards and 2 touchdowns in their first game, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second game. I think Saquon's going to have a big game with Jalen Hurts back. If they have to pass, it'll at least be competent. They have obviously the weapons with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown to get that done. And while the Commanders have had the late game heroics all season, especially in the second half, I'm still leaning Eagles. So I'm also going to go Eagles -6.
Okay, last game here, Bills at Chiefs. Here we go again. Josh Allen is 0-3 versus Mahomes in the playoffs and 0-1 in his lone AFC championship he's played in his career. I have no doubt the Bills can score on everybody, but I am still not confident in their defense. I haven't been all year. The three turnovers they forced versus Baltimore won them that game. Like I said, that's what they did. That was their defense. It's credit to their defense. But if they even had just two of those turnovers, they probably lose because they were able to, Lamar and the Ravens were able to move the ball outside of those few bad plays. They will need to force some of those turnovers on Mahomes. If they can do what they did against Lamar, force him into some plays he usually doesn't make, they turn the ball over a couple times, your offense plays as good as they played all year, then you're going to be in a great spot. But Mahomes in the playoffs is not going to want to turn that ball over, and he's not probably not going to. Bills love to run their offense through the run game really tough versus possibly the league's best run defense, but they were really solid on the run versus another good run defense last week in Baltimore. Neither team was able to run the ball well in week 11. I think whoever can run the ball better in this game most likely wins. Bills were able to completely eliminate Travis Kelce in week 11. Doing that again will probably lead to a win for them, but Kelce in the playoffs is just different. He's a different animal. You're going to want to keep taking his receptions, his yards, and Mahomes' rushing yards all day in the playoffs. This game can very well come down to kicking, and I just trust Harrison Butker more than I trust Bass at this point. Like I said, I'm going with Kansas City to win the Super Bowl, so there's no surprise. I am going to go with them here at -1.5, but this game could go either way, obviously.
Yeah, it can go either way. Mahomes versus Allen, two of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. This game's going to be refed by Clete Blakeman, and in the past 5 years, the Bills are 5-2 with him refing, 1-0 this year. Chiefs are only 3-4 with him refing, and they have not had him this season. The last time he refed a game was that Christmas Day game against the Raiders, where they lost 5-6 overall with Mahomes, with Clete Blakeman as his referee. That's six of Mahomes' 26 losses in his career, so that could be a referee advantage for the Bills, actually. But as we know, the Chiefs do tend to get a pretty good whistle all season, especially in the playoffs. Chiefs' only loss this season is to Josh Allen's Bills. That game was in Buffalo, which is big because we know how good Buffalo is at home. In the final four games of the season, like you said, Travis Kelce struggled, only 46.5 yards per game, and one touchdown. We saw last week, eight was dominant. Seven catches, 117 yards, both the season or a season high in yards. He now has more 100-yard receiving games in NFL playoff history than this guy Jerry Rice. I don't know if people have heard of him, but that is a very impressive stat for Kelce. He's one of, if not the best, playoff receiver in history. And when he played the Bills in Week 11, he had only two catches for 8 yards. That's a big advantage. If the Bills can hold him to a small amount, that could be big. But we know how they are in the playoffs. So Bills have won four straight regular season games against the Chiefs. We saw obviously this year they beat them in the 2021 regular season, the 2022, and the 2023 regular season. But they are 0-3 in the postseason, lost in 2020, 2021, and 2023. They dominate them in the regular season and lose at home. So 10-0 at home this season for the Bills, 5-4 on the road. Four of those losses uh, have been big. Obviously, Ravens, Texans, Lions, and Rams were all road games for them. Those are all playoff teams, and they went 1-3 in those games. But I have to switch it up a little bit. I do think the Bills can win this game, although they're on the road. At some point, Josh Allen's finally going to get that playoff win against Kansas City, and although it might not be this year, I'm gonna pick it. Josh Allen has the most playoff wins of any quarterback in NFL history to not make the Super Bowl. He has seven of them. I think he's gonna get that eighth win here and bring his Buffalo Bills to the Super Bowl. And I think all of the Buffalo Bills Super Bowls have been against NFC East teams. Obviously, it has to be an NFC East team this year, so I'm gonna pick the Bills.
Okay, we'll finish off here with our best bets. I will lead us off. I'm going to take Washington, Philly under 47.5. Like I said, I think the third game in a trilogy favors the defenses. I know that I said that the Philly is going to be able to run all over this Commanders defense, but I think that just chews a ton of clock for them. We know Philly is known to go through some dry spells offensively, so you have to take that into consideration. And I think their good defense is good enough to stop Jaden Daniels. So I'm going to take under 47.5 Washington, Philly.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the under in the other game. Bills, Chiefs under, also 47.5. I think these are two great defenses, or well, the Chiefs obviously have a great defense. The Bills defense is okay. They're better at home. But I think it's going to be two offenses that if they do score, it's going to be long drives. They're not going to be getting big plays as much as we normally see. I don't think there's going to be too many turnovers, so teams are going to have to go drive the full field to get a touchdown. So I think it's just going to be an efficient offensive game from these teams, and so I'm going to go that under 47.5.
Okay. My last best bet, I'm gonna go with the Chiefs -1.5. Like I said, I like the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, so I'm obviously going to take them to win this game. And you get the Chiefs at home in the playoffs with a healthy Mahomes and a great defense at -1.5. That's impossible to turn down. I have to take it. If history tells you something's gonna happen over and over and over again, I'm going to trust history and I'm gonna take Mahomes to beat Josh Allen and go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm going to take Eagles -6. I trust Saquon Barkley in this offense to have a big day against the Commanders. I think he's going to have another 150 plus yard game. They're not going to abandon the run as long as they don't turn the ball over. I think they're going to score on most possessions, and I trust their defense to slow down Jaden Daniels. They've done it this season, so I think they can do it again. I'm going Eagles -6.
Okay, that will about do it for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. Do not forget to like and subscribe if you made it this far. Hit all the links in our description for TikTok, social media, Spotify, and all that good stuff. We will be back next week to preview I guess we won't preview the Super Bowl, but we will talk about these NFC title games, probably some coaching hirings, and all the news in the NFL. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see everyone in the next one.